A business doesn't want to make a loss. What does it want to make? A manufacturing process releases noxious gases. What is the most important safety measure for workers at this plant? Ensuring good ventilation or appropriate footwear? What can we call a specialist who repairs leaking water pipes? At what ceremony do students receive their degree or diploma at the end of their period of study? Despite all the advances in equality between the sexes, would more men or women play professional football? What do you call the person who faces you in court? How many days are in a leap year? How many seasons are there in a year? How many years are there in a century? How many years are there in a decade? How many years does it take to finish undergraduate study? How would you describe an economy based largely on farming?
How many sides does a hexagonal have?
If someone lives in an urban area, where do they live?
What is the object that we use to open a window or a door?
If something such as fabric or medicine is artificially made, not natural, what do we say it is?
In which compass does the sun come up?
In which direction does the sun rise from? Jane and Peter have 3 children. They are 4, 13, and 15 years old. They only have one son, who is the youngest child. And how old is their middle child? Some calendars begin the week on Sunday. What is the other day which commonly starts a week?
What is added to a drink if you want to cool it down on a hot day?
What do we call a book that contains lots of words with their meanings? What do we call a period of 10 years? What do we call the date that a piece of work must be finished by? What do we call the first meal of the day? What do we call the organs in our chest that we use to breathe? What do we call the piece of paper that proves you have bought an item? What do we call the study of living things? What do you call the alphabetical list at the end of a textbook that tells you where to find specific information? What do you call the very long essay that students have to write for a doctoral degree? What do you need to see things which are far away? What does a king or queen wear on their head at official ceremonies? What instrument would you use to examine very small objects or life forms? What is 3/4 of 100%? What is a collective term for cows and bulls, especially on a farm?
What are the paintings or photos of people, especially when it includes someone's face, head and shoulder?
What is more fuel efficient, car or truck? What is the antonym of vertical?
What is the important document that can prove you are eligible to drive a car?
In the university, what do you study if you want to study the human mind and behaviors?
What is the quickest way to get to the 21st floor? What is the study of the stars and planets called? What is the subject that involves geometry and algebra? What is the word for a period of 100 years?
What is the shape in geometry for a shape that has 3 sides? What kind of protector does a motorbike rider wear to protect his head?
What kind of liquid do mammals feed their babies? What organ do cardiologists specialize in?
The opposite direction of southwest on a compass is?
What special document do most people traveling between one country to another need to carry?
What is the southernmost or northernmost part of the Earth called?
What word is used to describe frozen water? What's the joint called where your hand is connected to your arm? When the writer of a book is unknown, what word is used for the author?
Where would you normally expect to find equipment like microscopes, Bunsen burner, beakers, and Petri dishes?
Where would you go to see an exhibition of sculpture? Which hospital department would you go to for an X-ray, radiology, or cardiology?
Which instrument is used for measuring temperature?
Which section of a newspaper gives the opinion of an editor?
Which sweet food is produced by bees? Which symbol is used to complete a sentence? Would you go to a pharmacy or a surgery to get a prescription filled after visiting a doctor?
What do you call someone who cannot see?
Whose job is it to treat people that are ill or have an injury at a hospital? What kind of book is written by a person about their own life?
What is there a liquid that flows from the heart of their stuff the body?
What is the name of a building where you can borrow books? Who is a person that makes bread, cakes, and pastries? What organ controls your speech, feelings, body movement, and thoughts? What is a violent conflict between two or more countries? What do you call the number of people living in a specific area?
What is the financial plan of how much money you will spend over a period of time?
On what geographical location would someone be living if their country is surrounded by water on all sides? If a button has come off a shirt, what would someone most likely use to put it back on? What do we call a period of 1,000 years? What do ophthalmologists specialize in? Which is the longest? A decade, a millennium, or a century? How many days in a week? What do you call a piece of equipment we use to look at stars?
Apart from addition, subtraction, and multiplication, what is the other mathematical calculation method?
Where do camels normally appear? How many years are there in a millennium? Which natural material is used to make car tiers? How many countries are involved in a mutual agreement?
How many days are there in a fortnight?
If a figure is pentagon, how many sides does it have?
What do you call the strap that secures a person in a car or an aeroplane?
When you get lost in a city, what do you need? If one's response is simultaneous, quick, or slow.
What would call a doctor who sells prescribed medicines?
What can we call the animals with white ivory and long trunk? What do you call the seasonal flying from cold to warmer areas? Mitigation or migration? How do you describe the desert? Humid or dry? How many days added in February during a leap year? How many years does a centennial celebrate?
How would you call people who study ancient bones, rocks, and plants?
If there are 8 black balls and 1 white ball, and I randomly pick one, which color is most likely to be picked? If you want to buy a ring, who do you approach? A jeweler or pharmacist?
What do you the instructions for cooking a meal?
What is the job title for someone who cooks food in a kitchen? What do you call a list in front of a book which outlines the structure of a book? What is a sundial measure according to the shadow in the sunlight? What is the big musical instrument that has 88 black and white keys? What is the joint between your shoulder and your forearm?
What is the antonym of predecessor?
What are the strings on shoes? What are the things that you touch with your left hand when you play a guitar? What kind of sense you use by your ears? What type of resources does an electric device use?
What do we call the site of a college or university's buildings?
Which kind of mountain can erupt? What do we call the Times New Roman in Word? How many months does a calendar year have?
What are the two holes in your nose that you use to breathe?
What can be used to describe desert? Aridity or humidity? Before airplanes were invented, how did people travel from America to Europe? What system does the Earth belong to? In the word postgraduate, what does post mean? What is the opposite of positive? What do we call the thread in the center of a candle? What natural resource is used by a carpenter? If you are happy with an agreement, what would you like to put at the bottom of the contract with the date? How many hemispheres does the equator split the Earth into?
If a conference is held annually, how often is it held?
What is the most catching line of the newspaper? How do we call a person who works in the company? What do we call a festival which is held every 4 years, gathering people together as a sporting event? What type of food does a vegetarian eat? Beef pie or fruit salad? Which day is between Tuesday and Thursday? What can bring astronauts to space? What publication reports daily news?
Which part of your leg can make it possible to bend?
Oral English is different from academic English. Which is the best term to describe academic English? Tolerant or rigorous? What is the collection of pictures called? What is the thing that has iron inside and can attract iron? Who is a physician who performs surgical operations? We went somewhere. How do you understand it's a past sentence? What is the opposite side that sun rises? Who sits in the cockpit of an airplane? How do you describe the line that segment a circle? Which continent do China, India, Korea, and Japan locate? What is the antonym of artificial? What do bees collect from flowers? Why bees are important to agriculture? What type of shape has 4 corners, 4 lines that are equal in length? What do we call the person who can speak 2 languages? In addition to the A, E, I, O, what is the other vowel? What is a standard set of letters that is used to write one or more languages based upon the general principle?
What is the dictionary of synonyms and antonyms?
What is the name for students in universities who have not yet graduated? What kind of book would you use to look up a word that you don't understand? A picture of a globe is shown. What is this field of study?
What does the acronym ASAP stand for?
What does IT stand for? Who produces books? What do these following belong to? Chrysanthemum, roses, daisies, tulip, etc. What device do you use to measure your weight?
What do you call the diagram which includes a horizontal line called x-axis and a vertical line called y-axis?
How many wheels does a tricycle have? Which part at the end of book can be used for further reading, an index or a bibliography?
Where can you normally find the index in a book?
Which one has a higher humidity, a desert or a rainforest? What is the hardest part of your hand? What is the hard object in the center of peaches, apples, and pears? What is the chemical symbol H2O stands for? A newspaper is published every day, and a journal is published every month. What do you call the publication that is published 4 times a year? What is the 26th letter we use to write English words? How would you describe an animal that no longer exists on the earth? If you want to read tragedies or comedies, what kind of book do you read? What's the color of the medal that a champion gets?
If someone has a couple of kids, how many kids does he have? How do you call the pointing device that is connected to the computer? What do you call the siblings who were born at the same time?
Which of the following is not a means of transportation? By plane, by public transportation, or car model? What is the music that is recorded for a movie or a film? If a car is not stationary, what is it doing?
Which one of the following is not a mythological animal?
What literacy genre describes all details of a famous person's life?
What are your options in gender when you completing an application form?
Tomorrow's lecture has been cancelled. If today is Tuesday, then on which day was the lecture cancelled?
Where do people go for watching sports or games? What educational institution does a 10-year-old boy go to? What do these following describe? Kilogram, pounds, tons? What is the room that is under the ground floor?
When you have the primary and the secondary, what do you have next?
What order is a bibliography usually listed in? When your bone is injured and broken, what would you say you have? How would you describe the process in which ice becomes water? What is a thermometer used to measure? What is the name of male sheep? What do we call the first paragraph of a report? What is the heading at the top of an article or page in a newspaper or magazine? When a person's blood alcohol content is higher than the standard range, what activity can't the person do? What material are windows made of? How do we call the car that uses two types of fuels?
What protects birds on the outside of their bodies?
What do mammals use to feed their next generations? What are the people who study history and historical evidence? Does a scapegoat receive or give a crime? What do you call a very long essay that students have to write for a doctor degree? What century are we living in now? What device is used to measure a 200-meter sprint? What is the device that shows the time of the day according to the shadow of sunlight? What does a thermometer measure? What do you use to test the body temperature? What is 1/2 of 100%? When something is given in a pair, how many of them are there? What do meter and millimeter measure, height or length?
What do you call the 5 parts at the front of your foot?
Equator divide the Earth into how many parts? What's the legal document protecting someone's intellectual property? What shines at night in the sky and uses its own brightness? Which shape has 4 equal sides and 4 angles, and each angle is a right angle? How often does February have an extra day?
What is the legal document that sets out how the people want their property and possessions, their estate, divided after their death? What do we call the things that birds use to fly?
How many years are celebrated in a bicentennial?
How do you call the doctor who treats sick animals?
What are dollars, euros, and pounds the examples of?
Who take care of people who are sick and stay in hospital? In what section of a library can you use the books and materials as references, but cannot borrow them out of the library? What is the opposite of division?
What is the ship that can travel underwater?
What rises from the east in the morning and sets to the west in the evening every day? What is the magazine that is dedicated to academic news? What is the collection of comma, period, colon, explanation marks, and question marks? What is the last paragraph of an essay? Where do people watch plays? What is the act of students being present at school? What is the short piece of music that comes before a longer piece, and is often used as an introduction? What do we call the device that controls electrical appliances on and off? What do we call the ground military forces? What force makes humans stay on the Earth? How often does a biennial convention take place? What do you call the person who plays musical instruments as a job? How do you describe an event that is held every 2 years?
What do you call the condition of being unable to sleep?
What kind of clothes and shoes do you wear to keep comfortable when hiking? How do you call the movements that the babies move by using hands and legs?
What is the ceremony where two people get married?
What do forks, spoons, and knives belong to? What do you throw underwater to keep ships staying on rivers or oceans without drifting away? Apart from coffee and hot chocolate, what beverages also contain caffeine?
What is the book that you write to describe your own life story?
What is the antonym of horizontal?
What identification document do most people carry to present their citizenship when entering other countries?
What's the place of areas where a college or a university is located? When you get lost in a city, what do you need to buy to find out where you are and where to go? If a meeting is scheduled on Wednesday and today is Tuesday, then will the meeting be held tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or next week?
What is the main harmful instance in tobacco that is often discouraged by a doctor?
What publication reports current events every day? If you want to study the human brain and behavior, what should you be? What's the process of people paying money to governments for public services?
What do you call a length of time that lasts for 7 days?
What is the activity of inhalation of tobacco substance that is harmful to our health? What financial institution do people usually go to save money? What is the job title of someone who works at the beach and saves people's lives when they are in danger in the sea? What documents would a doctor give to a patient to buy medicines? What subject involves the study of the periodic table? What is the occupation that transfers one language to another language? Which part of our bodies do we use the nasal spray in? What is a word or expression that has the same or nearly the same meaning as another in the same language?
How do we describe the position of subterranean?
How do you call someone with no hair? What is the process where the color becomes lighter and lighter when exposed to sunlight for a long time? What is the list that shows the names of actors and actresses in a movie? What is the long speech that is spoken by only one actor in a film or play? What device is used to measure the height of mountains? Who is the Swiss greatest scientist in physics? What is contained in poisonous animals? What is the highest position in the embassy?
What is the description of events that is spoken with background music during a film or a play?
What do you call the son of your sister or brother? What do you call a difficult time when economic activities slow down and there are more people unemployed?
What do you call the people who work on boats?
What device do you use to type when you use a computer?
What is the official survey of a country's population, especially including demographic details of individuals? What is the horizontal line that separates the globe into two same halves? What is the verb describing the process that water becomes ice? When it's raining, what object would you raise over your head? What is the section in the library called where you can only read but cannot bring the books out of the library? What kind of things that the students will receive at the end of the term? In what room do scientists usually do experiments? What clothing do people wear, such as students or nurses, to show that they belong to the same organization? What do people with claustrophobia fear? What are buses, trains, and cars used for? What animal is a shepherd responsible for? What is the line where the sky meets the land? What is the document do students receive at the end of the semester that shows a student's units and grades? What gas will be formed from the boiling water? If you are celebrating a biannual activity, how many years ago did you celebrate it last time?
What are the people who study religions?
Where in the universe do we get solar energy? Where in the campus are the periodical collections located? What do you call the people who travel to visit famous sightseeing locations? What is the boat that carries people from one side of a river to the other? What is the opposite of the word public, for example, when describing an event? What is the external organ used for hearing? What do you call a baby cat? If there is only one business controlling the trades or the suppliers in an industry, how do you describe it in economical terms? What category do bees, butterflies, and mosquitoes belong to? What is the yellow stuff found on beaches or deserts? What is the sound of lightning? What is the opposite of even numbers? What is the person called who has been suspected by the police? Which days in a week start with the alphabet T? What is the opposite of north? What will ice become when it melts? What vehicle runs on railways?
What is the political system where the country is ruled by a king or a queen? In some calendars, a week starts from Sundays. What is the other day that usually starts a week? What do people usually use to cut food? If Monday is the first day, what day is the fourth day?
What do we call trouser-like clothing worn for sports that ends above the knee?
What is the area of the lowland between hills or mountains? How many sides does an octagon have?
How do we call three siblings who were born at the same time?
What is the opposite of majority? If you leave a picture or design permanently on your skin with a needle and ink, what is that called?
What do we call a dream that is very frightening or unpleasant? What is the joint connecting the foot to the leg? When you mix black and white, what color would you get? What is the opposite of the word dangerous? What do you call the pieces of a puzzle which players try to piece together? What category do crystals, rubies, and diamonds belong to? What is the place where passengers wait for airplanes to take off or land? What do we call a period of 100 years? If a company requires its employees to wear identical clothes, what is the clothing called? In winter, what activities do people usually do on snow mountains by standing on a long, thin board? Who is the person who buys things in a shop? What instrument would you use when you want to weigh something? Soup is frequently eaten with what utensil? What is the storyline or the series of scenes of novels, movies, short stories or plays? What is the electronic device whose function is about the arithmetic of numbers? What is the star that gives heat and light to the Earth? What is the adjective opposite to rural? What is the main building of a large company or an organization? How do you call a section or a part of a book? What is the subject to study past events? What do you call a group of mountains? What do we call someone who studies languages? What is the second month of a year? When you are speeding on the road and pulled over by the police, what money would you need to pay? What is the opposite of white? What are the animals that have fins? What term do we use in business to mean a period of 3 months? What are the people living in Switzerland called? Some people is a right-hand writing person, then what do we call a person who uses his left hand to write? A criminal is someone who commits a crime. In this case, who is the other one who gets hurt or injured? What is the object that we use to open a window or a door? What do we call the place that is used to remind people of a famous person who has died or an important past event?
What is the name for a person who pays rent to the landlord?
What do you call the phenomenon when the snow at the top of a snow mountain collapses all at once? Number 1, 3, 5, 7 are odd numbers, then what are number 2, 4, 6? What fruit category includes orange, mandarin and lemon?
What is the word for a sick or injured person who is in hospital?
What is the verb that describes traveling on a boat? Who is the person who gives evidence in court? What do you call the daughter of your sister or brother? What is the opposite of negative? What is the room in which you keep things when you don't need them now? Which subject will teach you about the periodic table of elements? How many eggs are there in a dozen? What subject studies the life and structure of human, animals, and plants?
What could we call a natural disaster when the ground shakes violently?
What kind of movement of the sun can be seen during dawn? What is the short piece of writing containing the main ideas of a document?
What do you call a person who leaves university before finishing his or her studies? What is the political institution of a country? When we say someone is doing the BA in history or literature in the university, what does BA stand for? What is the job that people fly an airplane? Which day of the week comes after Wednesday? If a student fails to show up for a class, we can say he or she is. What is the mountain that is filled with melting rocks and hot gases? What is the name for a space without air? What does a meteorologist study? What is another name for religious study? What is the antonym of entrance? What is the barrier that can prevent floods from damaging our home? When you bake a cake, where do you put the tray into? If the first day of the week is Monday, then what is the fourth day called?
Which word is used for brother or a sister?
What do you call a short period of break between the parts of a concert or a play? What is place that a person lives permanently? What do you call someone who does a job with no salary or offers to do something without being forced? What do you call the property you left for others in a will? What do we call the line between a sunset and the sea? What substance would farmers spread into the soil in order to make plants grow more successfully? What is the term for the money paid every month by your employer? What is the loud noise that you hear during a storm? What is another way to say the arrangement of musical notes in a tune? What is the term for the political body or organization that runs a country? What is a person called whose job is to write news for newspapers? What word do you use to describe uncooked meat? What is the connecting part between two bones? What's the shop that specialized in selling medication?
Who is the person who writes a piece of music, especially classic music?
What do people cast in an election? What is the opposite of guilty? What do we call drawings or writing on a wall, especially in a public place? What do we call a person who repairs cars? What do we call the animals which eat meat? What is the opposite of the color white? Where do submarines usually travel? What do we use to get to the third floor when the elevator is broken? What is the item of footwear to protect and comfort human foot? What do you call your cousin's father? What do you call the southernmost and northernmost parts of the earth? Who is the person who shares the same room with you? What will water become at 0 temperatures or under 0 temperatures? Which one is the biggest one, the elephant, the tiger, or cheetah? What is the summary for an academic paper showing what the essay is talking about? What is the name of the programs that run on a computer? What is the name of the government headed by a king or queen? What do you call the activity of taking out weeds from the ground? Apples and cherries come under which category? What are the people that plant food and raise crop commonly known as? Where do marine animals live? What is the antonym of maximum? What tool would you use to climb up to the roof of a house?
What would you call someone who travels and works in a spacecraft? What is the process called when you send a rocket into space? What do you call the brother of your father's or mother's? Who is a female's partner as in a married relationship? The people whose nationality belongs to Netherlands. What is the organ below your eyes? What is the organ below your eyes? What do you call the age range between childhood and adulthood? What's the relationship between two people sharing the same opinion? How to describe the two lines that have crossed each other and never meet again? What do you call the medicine that can treat headaches? What does BSc stand for in bachelor degree? If you can't take the elevator because it's broken, how can you get up and down?
If a person is not telling the truth, then what is he or she telling? What do we call something that is between gas and solid but is not water? What do we call people shopping in the market?
What is the body part of your leg that is below your thigh, or between your knee and ankle? What does the words TV stand for? What instrument do scientists use to see tiny elements that cannot be seen with naked eyes? What do we call the bags that contain possessions and people take with them when traveling? What is the category that include pens, pencils, and erasers? What do you call the daughter of your uncle? What is the synonym of destiny? What is the study of stars and planet called?
What do we call a car that uses two types of fuels? If you need to use a different currency, what do you need to do? What is the word to describe the process of bringing goods from foreign countries and then selling it in this country?
If a magazine is published quarterly, how many times a year is it published? What do you call young dogs? What is the antonym of export? What object have three legs that can provide a support for a camera or a telescope? What is the summary at the beginning of an academic paper called? What object have three legs that can provide a support for a camera or a telescope? What are apartments, houses, and flats called? What do we call a person who studies the past? What word means the opposite of artificial? What is the private teacher who gives you lessons outside school hours? What do you hear after a flash of lightning?
What do you call the red liquid that transports oxygen through your body? What is the word for a book that someone writes in order to tell the story of their own life? What do you call a photograph of a person's face seen from the side? What do you call a health professional who can help you with your mental health? A sabbatical is a lengthy time away from what type of activity? What is the name for the remains of an animal or plant preserved in rock? What is the word for the arguments presented in court by the person accused of a crime or their lawyer? In a circle, what is the straight line from the center point to its outer edge? What are the people who work on a ship or a plane? What do you call the person who studies weather? What do we call a young cow?
When the sun is in the sky, what can you see under your body?
What is the behavior when an animal changes its color to match the environment for protection?
What is the word for a narrow, tongue-shaped piece of land that sticks out into the sea? What type of body covering helps to insulate burns? The term green has come to be associated with the protection of what? What is the generic term for a person who once held the same position or title you now hold? What do we call someone who buys and sells insurance or shares in companies for other people? If you get sick, you go to see a doctor in hospital. There are different types of doctors. Some doctors deal with bones, some deal with the heart. Which doctor deal with teeth? What do you call the hair that grows above your eyes? Where can we find the footnotes on a page? This framework allows us to pose further research questions more systematically. What is the food that is used in a recipe? What is the food that is used in a recipe? Which continent is Canada located on? What is the opposite of the minus sign? What is the verb when employing someone or renting something? What do you call the person who is guilty in law term? What is the tool that you use to measure an adult's weight? What is the short form of a word? If you want to accelerate a car, which part do you need to press with your foot? If you want to accelerate a car, which part do you need to press with your foot? What will ice do when heated? What is the publication called that issues academic papers?